Someone's got to ask the question. No one wants to, but someone's got to ask it. If the Bengals' defense is bad this year, what is the reason? Let's get into it. All right, I'm Reed Mouse. Join along here with Michael Hart. You're watching, listening to Chatterbox Bengals in your podcast feed 365, and happy to do it. I think it's the first time, Mike, you've been on the show since we've started doing daily, so thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to be here with one of Georgia Tech's finest athletes of all time, Mike Hart. Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I think that calling me one of Georgia Tech's finest athletes is really pushing it. But, they've had some guys like Calvin Johnson and people like that who far surpassed me. But I appreciate it. I'm glad to be joining.
Your Chatterbox is Megatron, so that's good enough. So your thoughts on Vince Vaughn running a trick play to get Rudy Rudiger into the game, and Rudy. They were playing Georgia Tech in that game, I'm pretty sure.
They are, and Notre Dame and Rudy lined up offsides. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. He's offside.
Fair. But as I teased, we're going to talk today about it. There is a reason, and it is a well-adjusted reason why you get in podcasts. The other people that talk about the Bengals here in this town, we're all really excited for what this defense. And maybe no one's more excited than me. I've been on record saying that this team, there's several guys that I think could get to double-digit sacks. I think this team has the capability of clearing the benchmark that we've set for ourselves for years, which is, just being a mediocre defense. I think that's still the benchmark, but I think we can easily surpass that and get into top 10 territory. But we have to ask the question, which is, all right, you bring in Dexter Lawrence, bring in Bryan Cook, you bring in all these great pieces to the team. If it's not good, if we're looking up once again in January and we're not playing meaningful football games and it's because of our defense, what is the reason? What could cause this Bengals defense to fail? Me and Michael Hart are going to break into that today, but first we got to talk about the people that make this show possible, starting off with QC Kinetics. If knee pain or shoulder pain is slowing you down, whether it's on the golf course, the pickleball court, or even in the gym, it might be time to talk with the care team at QC Kinetics Cincinnati about regenerative medicine options. QC Kinetics takes a different approach, focusing on treatments designed to help your body heal and recover. They're conveniently located in Liberty Township, right across from Lakota East High School. See what the team at QC Kinetics is all about. Visit QCkinetics.com or call 513-655-3356. Make sure to tell them Chatterbox sent you. QC Kinetics. Better mobility starts with healing. And we also got to talk about our friends over at Sharefax Credit Union. Summertime is here, and it's perfect time to start those home renovations. Sharefax has $0 closing cost special that is extending until June 30th for home equity loans and lines of credit. Restrictions apply. Contact Sharefax for details at 513-753-2440 or visit sharefax.org/promotions events. Sharefax Credit Union is an equal opportunity lender and is insured by NCUA. And finally, our good friends over at 78 Cigars. Yeah, I got to tell you this. I was at a wedding last week, and someone I was there with was smoking a 78 cigar, and they spoke very highly of it. Cincinnati legend Anthony Munoz has a new venture, and we're fired up to partner with it here on Chatterbox Bengals. Introducing 78 Cigars, a premium cigar line from the Hall of Famer himself. If you love great cigars in Cincinnati football history, this is the perfect combination. You can grab 78 Cigars right now at both Montgomery Inn locations over at Creekside Cigar Company. You can check them out online. Just head to anthonymunoz.com, click on the 78 Cigar page, and learn more or place your order today. That's 78 Cigars from the greatest offensive lineman to ever do it. So from the greatest offensive lineman to ever do it to the greatest Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket to ever do it, Michael Hart. He's got the Anthony Munoz behind him. So, Mike, the question is simple. You and I assume you are. I haven't talked personally about this, but I assume you're in the same camp with me. It's like, hey, there's reason to be very excited about this Bengals defense going into the year. It feels like there's going to be a sufficient pass rush, which has been missing in years prior. I feel like there is some depth in the safety room, which certainly hasn't been the case. Now, there are some questions about the linebacker, and maybe that's your answer. But when you look at this defense, if we are once again looking up at the end of the year, we had a healthy Joe Burrow all year, and we're saying, man, we're on the outside looking in, and it's because the defense again. What do you think could lead us there? Where do you see some holes in this defense? What could possibly go wrong with this defensive roster as it's currently constructed?
Yeah, I completely agree with the fact that this defense has really upgraded in so many different positions. We've just really been able to bring people in that are just on paper and just in general are better. So I really like that aspect, and I expect to see a big step. However, where I think there may be an issue is not necessarily with their starters, but it could be with the depth. And I think a lot of people want to say, hey, oh yeah, it's the linebackers, right? The people that we didn't add anyone to. It's frankly not looking like we're really going to add anyone to. Maybe a veteran that maybe gets a cut, like a cap casualty of training camp or something like that. But for the most part, I think a lot of people would say it's the linebackers. However, I think that Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight started playing a little bit better. And where I would say that if there was going to be something where maybe we're getting 3/4 away in the season and where defense isn't playing as well as we would have liked, it would be because there was an injury in the secondary that led to some people taking snaps that are, we don't really have very much trust in. And so I think we're probably, I think a lot of people project out that we're only going to be playing two linebackers a lot. We're going to be in nickel for quite a lot of how we do that. So that would be Dax Hill on one side, DJ Turner on one side, and then Jalen Davis as your nickel. First off, Jalen Davis was a practice squad guy last year. He obviously performed pretty well last year, but that's a pretty big leap to, hey, practice squad guy to starting nickel. So now I believe that he, acquitted himself well. But imagine there's one injury there, whether it's DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and Jalen Davis. And you hate to project injury, but unfortunately that in the NFL, that's a very common thing. You then are having one of Takario Davis, Jusser Taylor, or Josh Newton as, having to play meaningful snaps covering people, right? And we've seen with Josh Newton, that didn't go very well. And maybe you're able to move somebody like a Kyle Duggar out to, fill in some of those spots. Maybe if it's tight end, be able to have him do that. But I think that with one injury, you could start really seeing where there could be some gaps there. And then, God forbid, two injuries to somebody, then it's like we're really running people out there. And it's just like the offense could be humming. Maybe we're even getting some pass rush, but it's just like we don't have the horses back there to be able to cover anybody. And that is where I could see, it's like that. It feels like they're maybe a man short back there. And if they could have a little bit more depth, I would feel a lot better. But I could see as you get further down in the season, if injuries start mounting, that this secondary could become a real liability.
Yeah, there's no doubt about the depth in that secondary. The thing that gives me a little confidence when you're talking about, how thin the depth chart is when you get into that secondary is I feel like this defense is constructed in a way that can hide a lot of its deficiencies. Like clearly, if I ask this question to 1,000 Bengals fans, the most frequent answer would be, well, the linebackers stink. And they did. You were right in saying that they got better towards the second half of the year, but they couldn't do worse. So yeah, the only way to go was up there. I look at the way that this team is built. And where there is no depth in the secondary, there's a lot of depth on that defensive line. Like there is several pieces. Is there going to be anyone that leads the league in sacks like Trey Hendrickson could? No. But there's a lot of pieces. I can name you a myriad of people on that defensive line, and I could go, could you see him getting 8 sacks? Like, could you see Myles Murphy getting 8 sacks? Yeah. Could you see Dexter Lawrence get 8 sacks? Of course. Could you see Boye Mafe get 8 sacks? Could you even see like Shemar Stewart having 5, 6, 7, 8? Possibly. Like I believe in the talent. I haven't seen it on the field. Maybe I'm crazy for saying that, or maybe I'm just too optimistic. But there is a lot of depth on this defensive line. And because of that, it is going to mask some of the deficiencies in the linebacking crew, in the secondary, to where like I truly believe that because of how much pressure we're going to put, how many holes we're going to stop on the defensive line with Dexter Lawrence and BJ and TJ, like all these defensive linemen that we've brought in or have brought back, it's going to mask a lot of problems. But I do think you're right that where I look at this roster and I think what could go wrong, it is an injury. But it's not an injury to the secondary because I think that, and maybe this is just the glass half full Reed Mouse version of it. I think if like Dexter Lawrence and this defensive line is still really healthy and humming, I think we're going to see some really good play out of the linebackers and safeties and cornerbacks because they all help each other out. Okay, what happens if Dexter Lawrence misses 5 games?
Yeah.
What happens if Dexter Lawrence misses 5 games? What happens if, Myles Murphy is humming or Boye Mafe is humming off the edge, and then all of a sudden they're missing. Both those guys are missing several games, and they could kind of attack our edge. What happens there? So I am with you in the degree that injury is where I am most concerned. More so than the linebacking crew, more so than the depth in the secondary. Injury is my biggest concern, but it is on that defensive line. If this defensive line has a big piece, if we blow another first-round pick this year, and by that I mean Dexter Lawrence misses half the season due to injury, then all of a sudden we're looking at a bad defense again. And that's my point. That's where I'm at, is if we can't get Dexter Lawrence out there, if we get some, a couple edge rushers that are down for a significant time and all of a sudden we're pulling up guys that are getting a lot more snaps than they should see, then I can see our defense really start going back to the way they've been over the last few years. Do you think that's kind of fair?
Yeah, I do. And I think that you brought up a really good point about, the defensive line can help cover for some of the failings of the people in the secondary and maybe even linebackers too, right? Mm-hmm. Having, Dexter Lawrence blowing the guy up and not requiring Demetrius Knight-Barrett-Carter to have to make the tackle is, that's a plus, right? I think it's also going to come down to just the kind of maybe the timing of those injuries. I would imagine there's going to be injuries. There's going to be people that miss a game or two. NFL is too violent that's just how it works. It's just like, but if you can, miss that Jonathan Allen 3 games that he's down, the Boye Mafe 2 games that he's down, if you can maybe combine that with still having DJ Turner, Dax Hill on the outside being able to cover for a little bit longer, like then you're able to kind of paper over that a little bit more, or vice versa, right? DJ Turner is down for a couple games and you have to play Josh Newton out there, but you're all your horses are healthy on the defensive line. You can just really get after a quarterback in a way that maybe can paper over some of those flaws in the secondary. So I think maybe even the timing of those injuries too are really going to play a big role in it, because you hate to talk about injuries because it's like you would love for that to just not happen. And just like on paper, this looks great. You're just like, man, how all this is going to be humming, but it's just like there's going to be some breaks that are going to be required in order to be able to do that, just because injuries are going to happen over this season, and you got to hope that you're able to have the depth to kind of paper over some of the problems that you're getting, even when the inevitable injury comes about.
You are right about that in the regard of, like, we could talk about injuries, but we know that they are inevitable. We know that they're going to happen, and really all you're hoping for is that when the most important games happen, that people are healthy. So let me ask you this question. Knowing that injuries are inevitable, and this is kind of a hypothetical question, Mike, would you rather, like, Boye Mafe misses 2 games, and then Dexter Lawrence misses the next 3 games, and then Jonathan Allen misses 4 games? Or would you rather just kind of we just have 2-3 weeks where everyone's kind of bad, and we kind of just lick our wounds from there, and we keep a healthy unit for the rest of the year? What would be the better solution there?
Or Joe Burrow puts on Superman's cape and, wins a game 45-42, right?
And it all depends on who you play, too, right? Like when Dexter Lawrence is hurt, is it a 3-game stretch? You're like, we don't need Dexter Lawrence for these 3 games. We'll do just fine.
Right. Yeah, I think that's tough. I don't know. My initial reaction is spread out the injuries if we're going to lose them, just because I think, especially if it's on the defensive line, I still believe in Shemar Stewart. I think Cashius Howell is going to
Yeah,
be
Cashius
an
Howell.
interesting person that not obviously not having to start right away, but being able to slot in as maybe a guy who can come off the edge on third down, maybe even play a little bit of these cover linebacker roles that Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter struggled with. I think that is something as well that he might be able to add in there that is going to be an interesting wrinkle that as the season moves on, I think he'll be able to learn more in this defense to be able to maybe even fill in some of these spots if there are injuries done. So I would my reaction to that is I think that spread them out, right? Obviously to get them
Mm-hmm.
healthy by the end of the year, but the more starters that we have in, the better chance I think we have for winning those games, even with injuries. So that'd be where I would go with it.
Right. Yeah. There's no doubt about it that this defense is even where I'm saying like I could see where we get to the end of the year and this is exceeded our expectations in like where we've just said like can you be a league average defense where we could maybe even expect a little bit better than that, but it is still the roster is pretty thin when you get to that linebacking in that cornerback room. I'll say this, Mike, because I haven't had you on the show and we're talking about depth in this defense. Like I'm looking at the depth chart right now. There is like we can take an injury here or there to this defensive line. It's just like Boye Mafe, he could get 5 to 8 sacks. Dexter Lawrence could get 5, 8 sacks. Like there's so many pieces that you could say, yeah, I could see them getting 5. I can see them getting 8 sacks. To where last year there was maybe 2 guys on the roster that you could see getting 5 to 8 sacks. Like there was that was it. Now we have 6 to 7, which is a great piece. But when the game is all about space and how much space can you evaporate for the offensive side? At Dexter Lawrence is going to create that space. Yeah, this defensive unit just cannot suffer the key pieces that are there to mask kind of the deficiencies with that linebacking unit. So you've already established that you are a little excited. I don't want to say excited. You are still have a little bit of confidence in Shemar Stewart, where a lot of people wrote him off. And I would say I'm closer to fully writing off Shemar Stewart. That's not what I'm asking. Where is your confidence level for this linebacking crew?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think where a lot of people are down on Shemar Stewart, and maybe rightfully so, is right. It just really didn't seem like, yeah, he was hampered by an injury, which obviously a high ankle sprain when you're coming off the edge is a big deal, right? But it just, I didn't really see some level of improvement. And just like, I just don't think that Bengals fans have the hugest amount of confidence that Shemar Stewart is in the lab doing stuff in this offseason. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just like the guy that, held out for training camp and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I think that most people's assumption is that he's just, hopefully he gets better, but they aren't counting on it. Now we saw steps from Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. Like we saw the bottom of the barrel in that Chicago Bears game, the Arizona Cardinals game. It's just like we saw some bad football, just tight ends running all over them and stuff like that. Now, what we did see, though, we did see improvement going into the year. And from everything that we've seen from interviews, from talking to the coaching staff, those two are, not only did they improve, but are very committed to getting better. And I don't think that they've hit their ceiling. It may be easy to think that a second and third round linebacker is just maybe they have hit their ceiling and that's just as good as they're going to be, but I don't think they have. I think that they are able to, there's so much that's on the plate of a NFL starting linebacker that's, got the green dot that's calling the defense and stuff like that is going to, just the leap from year 1 to year 2, I think can be huge. And now you have a guy in the middle of the defense, Dexter Lawrence, that is going to be double, triple teamed, that is going to be, understand, being able to help with tackling and providing the space that you need. You're going to have a guy, Bryan Cook on the back end that you can feel confident is going to be able to run fit or be able to at least tackle in the secondary, So I think that there's just a lot of different things that they've put around these defensive linebackers to be able to make them or help them be successful. And that's why I think that we can see a leap. It's like, I think they can improve, and I think the pieces around them will help them do what they do best better. So that's kind of where I sit. Even Kyle Duggar, right? Kyle Duggar is a safety, but we've been talking all offseason about how he can be a safety, but he can even fit down and maybe even cover in the slot, but also do, he's big enough to do linebacker and maybe even be a spy. So there's lots of different ways. It's just like you could use him to paper over some of the deficiencies that somebody like a Demetrius Knight or Barrett Carter might have. There's just a lot of different players that they can throw at to put them in the position to succeed.
Yeah, it is. I'll say this. I'm going to give the linebackers a short leash. I said before the offseason that it would be an abject disaster. It would be terrible if we did not address this linebacking room. And as it currently sits on June 15th, they didn't address the linebacking room. I'll say this, though. In years previous, when we're talking about pieces that were a detriment to this defensive unit, we hadn't heard the cohesion of the coaching staff kind of put their arms around. Like Geno Stone, no one was going out to bat for Geno Stone. Currently, no one's really going to bat for Shemar Stewart. People are going to bat for Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter, and maybe it's because they are such a crucial piece to this team. Maybe it is because they just want to instill a little bit of confidence knowing how important they are. But it's worth saying that, yes, coaches are going to coach up and do the coaches speak at the podium and stuff like that. But they're also not going to outwardly lie to where they're not going to say anything that they don't deep in their heart at least a little bit believe or at least hope for. And they're saying all the right things when it comes to Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter. You can keep a short leash for them, but at least give them a little bit of slack. Mike, as we round this thing out, any parting thoughts or final words as we finish up this short little podcast?
Yeah, I guess I will leave with this, and I think that obviously injury aside, this defense can really be something that is a strength, not just a get you by for this offense, but a strength. And it's just like thinking about that when you're going up against, especially you're going up against some of these offenses within the division, right? I'm just imagining this Bengals defense going up and chasing around Deshaun Watson, throwing to who knows who, Casey Concepcion, the rookie that they just got, or chasing around Aaron Rodgers. Like, what are we going to do when Dexter Lawrence has 3 sacks in Pittsburgh against Aaron Rodgers? Like, that's going to be like, I can see how I can really see the vision of where this defense can cause some serious havoc, especially to some of these not as good offenses that they're going to be facing, especially in the division. So while yes, an injury could derail us, I'm still extremely positive and I can't wait to see what this iteration of the Bengals defense looks like, because I think they have a chance to really not only not lose this game, but potentially win us a game.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a change of pace for the past few years? Yeah, it's for years it's been, you keep Joe Burrow healthy, this team will do some miraculous things. Now it's been kind of a struggle, but we are getting inching closer to, like, if this team loses Dexter Lawrence for a large period of time, then we might just be right back to where we were for the last few years. So it's anxiety-inducing, but it's also nice to have a player that can really influence a game the way that Sexy Dexy can, and a few other pieces. But I am excited when I talk about this defense, and maybe we'll be in week 4 of this year and we'll completely throw that out the window. But we'll deal with that at the end of September. As always, this is Chatterbox Bengals in your podcast feed every single day, 365 days a year. We're happy to do it for everyone that does it around here. I am Reed Mouse with Michael Hart. Sign off. We'll see you guys around next time here on Chatterbox Bengals.